Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a story that's just so powerful. It starts with one person's struggle, but ends up revealing a truth that's, well, universal, stretching across all of time and culture. So, let me start with a question for you. What could possibly connect a Disney classic, one of the most important leaders in modern history, and a sacred text? It really sounds like the start of a joke, doesn't it? The link isn't obvious at all, but I promise you it's there, and it's tied to something we all understand.
And there it is. The answer is a powerful story about overcoming injustice. At the very core of all three is this timeless narrative of resilience, of holding on when the odds are completely stacked against you, and about integrity winning out in the end. We see this pattern everywhere because it speaks so directly to our own hopes and our own struggles.
So our journey today kicks off with one of the most amazing and complete stories in the entire Quran, Surah Yusuf, which is the chapter of Joseph. And this isn't just a list of rules or lessons. It's a full-on story. It's got drama, suspense, and some really deep human psychology.
Joseph's life is just an absolute roller coaster. Seriously, he goes from being the favorite son to being betrayed and sold into slavery by his own brothers. Then he resists temptation in a powerful household, only to be thrown in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And from that prison, he rises to become one of the most powerful people in all of Egypt. It's just an incredible arc that shows you how a seemingly tragic path can completely turn around. But here's what's so amazing. This ancient story doesn't just stay in the pages of a book. Its themes are so universal that you can see them reflected pretty much everywhere, in history, in literature, even in some of our favorite movies. Let's dig into a couple of those echoes. Okay, first up, jealousy. This is what drives Joseph's brothers to betray him in the worst way. And that exact same destructive emotion. It's the engine for some of fiction's most iconic villains, right? Think about Shakespeare's Iago, or even Scar in The Lion King. It's a timeless warning about how envy can absolutely poison everything. Next, let's talk about patience when facing injustice. Joseph is falsely accused, thrown in jail, and he just waits for years. His story of patient endurance has this incredibly powerful real-world parallel in Nelson Mandela, who was imprisoned for 27 years, but never, ever lost his resolve. And of course, we see it in movies too, like with Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption, a guy who just refuses to give up hope.
But maybe the most powerful lesson in the whole story is about forgiveness. When Joseph finally has all the power, when he could have easily taken revenge on his brothers, he chooses to forgive them instead. It's this huge act of grace that you see mirrored in Mandela's call to heal South Africa, and even in the honor of a fictional character like Maximus in Gladiator. So Joseph's story gives us this incredible roadmap for navigating our own trials. But there's a suggestion that his life isn't just a story about one man, it's also illustrating a much bigger universal law. So let's see what that is. And to understand that, we're going to move on to our next chapter, Surah Ar-Ra'd, or the Thunder. This part shifts gears a little bit, moving from a personal story to a fundamental principle. It gives us this really powerful metaphor to help us tell the difference between what's temporary and what's meant to last.
Okay, at the heart of this chapter is the parable of the foam and the water. Picture a big, rushing river. The Quran says that falsehood, evil, is like the noisy, churning foam you see right on the surface. It gets all the attention, it's loud, but it's temporary. It has no real substance. But the truth, the good, that's the water itself. It's quiet, it's essential, and it endures. It's what actually benefits everything around it.
The contrast is just so clear. Evil is the foam. It's loud, it's flashy, it grabs your attention. But ultimately, it's useless and it disappears. Good is the water. It's quiet, it's lasting, and it's what actually helps people. It's the substance that remains long after the foam is gone. And if you think about it, Joseph's trials were the foam, but his integrity, that was the water that lasted. So we have this universal law. Good endures, evil fades away. It sounds great, right? But it begs a really important question. When you're in the middle of a storm and you're surrounded by all that loud, chaotic foam, what gives you the strength to believe in the quiet water underneath? Where does that strength come from?
For that answer, we turn to our third and final chapter for this exploration, Surah Ibrahim, or Abraham. This surah makes the case that the foundation, the source of all that inner strength, is faith.
And really, who better to be the model of that kind of faith than Abraham?
He's presented as the ultimate example of someone who keeps an unwavering trust and, this part's crucial, gratitude, even when facing unbelievable challenges. His life is basically the blueprint for building that kind of enduring strength.
So what does this kind of faith actually look like? Well, according to the text, it's built on a few key ideas. It's about recognizing that faith itself is the greatest gift. It's about actively practicing gratitude for everything, the big things and the small things. And the text suggests this gratitude, this submission, acts as a kind of divine protection, reinforcing that core belief that truth, the good stuff, will always win in the end.
All right, let's zoom out for a second and just look at the incredible path we've just followed. We started with something deeply personal and ended up with something completely universal. Think about it. We started with the story of Joseph, just one person trying to navigate unbelievable injustice. Then, his life story became the perfect example of a universal law from the chapter of Thunder, that good endures while evil fades. And finally, with Abraham, we found the source code for that endurance, a deep faith built on a foundation of gratitude.
And that brings us to one last thought. This whole narrative suggests a really powerful idea, that our biggest challenges, the loud, chaotic foam in our lives, are often just temporary distractions, and that beneath them lie these profound, life-giving truths, the useful water. So the question I want to leave you with is this: what foam in your own life might be hiding the useful water just beneath the surface? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.